Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve. Prime Video has released the first 3 episodes of The Boys Season 3 early, so it's about time that I share more of my thoughts about not only these episodes, but perhaps a little bit more of what's to come in the remaining episodes of this season. If you are new to my channel, you might not already know this, but I was given press screeners for Season 3, so I have seen the entire season, and I have so many thoughts and feelings about not only what has aired, but what is still to come in the remaining 5 episodes. Being that there are 3 episodes in the premiere, I'm going to try to speed run through what's in them and share my opinions, maybe hint a little bit at what's coming up. Let's see how it goes. So the first episode starts with a glimpse at a more finished version of the Dawn of the Seven film, complete with a Charlize Theron cameo. I hope Eric Kripke does an interview where he explains how they got her, because I really want to know that story. That was one of the things on the do not reveal list, her cameo, but it's not the only cameo we are not allowed to talk about ahead of airing. But it is the better cameo this season. I said what I said. Jumping ahead to that shocking opening, the thing that Karl Urban was hinting at a lot on the show's promo tour, the termite sneeze explosion. Yeah, that was nasty. It was dark-sided. But I do appreciate the attention to detail, because if you watch that scene carefully, you will see that before the incident, he partook in a certain substance, he sniffed it up, and then he sneezed, which... Does that substance cause you to sneeze? Does anyone know? I don't partake, so I wouldn't know if that's medically accurate, but as far as storytelling goes, it sets a precedent, so you're not able to complain that the sneeze came out of nowhere. He took some, he sneezed, boyfriend asked him to get up in his business, and then termite sniffed some more. So we knew the sneeze was coming. But actually, as a Kimiko stan, I have a bone to pick with this scene. When Termite is trying to attack Frenchie, he's trying to get all up in his business. So Kimiko starts doing what? Undoing Frenchie's belt so she can get Termite out of there. Why is it that it only took 15 minutes into this first episode for Hughie and Annie to start clapping cheeks, but we are in season 3 and the only action I'm getting for Frenchie and Kimiko is under the circumstances of someone trying to kill them? I just want to know why Eric Kripke has it out for kimchi shippers. What did we ever do to you? That's the most action they've had with each other in 3 seasons! Simon Pegg had a cameo. It was nice to see him again, since he and Jack have really good chemistry together as father and son. I'm assuming you're starting to see now that Hughie is having some issues with his masculinity. Did you see how insecure he was over Annie's ex-boyfriend? She loves you. She's never once given you the impression she wants to find love and affection elsewhere. So why are you acting so insecure? It's that social conditioning. Society is making you feel like you're not man enough for her, but she never said you weren't enough for her. So I'm going to need you to get it together, petite Hughie. And for Mother's Milk, I don't have much to say about what they've revealed thus far. I think it was a big reveal to some viewers that Soldier Boy killed his family. As someone who has seen the season in its entirety, I don't think they do much between him and Soldier Boy that was all that interesting, to be quite honest. What I would instead advise you to keep an eye on is Todd. I'm not spoiling anything, but that man is demonic. I'm not giving anything away about what happens further into this season, but for this grown man to be dressing up like Homelander, it's a red flag. I don't care if this man doesn't know about the full extent of Homelander's crimes, which are being kept secret from the public. A red flag is a red flag. The drama is incoming, and it will be ugly, and that's all I have to say about MM's corner of the show for the time being. I love that the first episode ended with Hughie getting rained on by blood. Would it be a boys' premiere without Petite Hughie getting a bloodbath? I don't think so. It feels like tradition at this point. He finds out Victoria Newman is bad news, which any anti-imperialist could have told you, but clearly he doesn't have those types of friends who can let him know to stay away from establishment politicians. We are just getting started with Miss Victoria this season. Part of me wishes there had been more time for Hughie to investigate and uncover the fact that the system he spent all these months believing in was actually a lie before finding that out. Maybe in a future season we will get a story more directly unpacking the evils of the DC political establishment. I hope so anyway. I think that would be really fun to watch on a show like this. Jumping to episode 2, I so enjoyed that we got another Billy Zane cameo. If you will recall, he was in season 1 in a pretend movie starring Popclaw. I would love it if he became a recurring bit on the show where he's always popping up in these terrible Vought movies. Now, I can't say I'm sad to see Stormfront go, but I love that she did go out making a mess for Homelander. On the one hand, it felt anticlimactic to keep her alive at the end of season 2, only for her to quickly unalive herself at the beginning of season 3. But the fact that this was a key turning point for Homelander as a character was essential, because this is what sends him spinning. You thought he was messy before? No. He's just getting started. When they showed that amusement park, I loved the attention to detail with the names of the food stands. Between this name and the woke walk and the LGB turkey legs, it was a nice touch to give a scathing critique of the corporate capitalist commodification of social justice. It was especially fitting given that we are kicking off the beginning of Pride Month and these nasty, evil imperialists are already at it with that nonsense. Now, of course, we can't talk about that park without talking about my girl, Kimiko. There was talking during the promo of season 2 of Eric having already told Karen that Kimiko is a fan of musicals, and Kimiko's love of music has been present since the beginning of the show, though we do love that it has expanded so much more in season 3. It's not a spoiler for me to say this because it was shown in the trailer, but there is a musical number coming up this season. But as far as these 3 episodes go, we see this repeated emphasis on Kimiko's voice intertwined with her love of music. She imagines herself singing, which I about levitated when that happened, and she's playing on a keyboard. It was really cute that Huey gave her her flowers when Butcher was being the worst about it, and Kimiko is genuinely excited at the prospect of being around music. What if she and Frenchie move to Marseille together and she starts working at a piano bar? I might cry if I think too hard about it. But now is when we really start to get a sense of what Kimiko is grappling with this season, which is that she feels like a monster because of her powers. And I don't think that's at all a fair assessment of who she is. I think she's being far too hard on herself. But really, the biggest issue she has is that her agency has been taken away from her time and time again. Her parents were killed. She was forced into being a child soldier with her brother. She was forcibly given these powers by being injected with Compound V. And then she got trafficked to America. All of these things are violent and traumatic and happening against her will. I don't think she should be blaming herself for the violence at the amusement park because she wasn't even the one who did it. It was Soulja Boy's ex-girlfriend, Crimson Countess. Frenchie, just give your woman a hug. She clearly needs it. The other major part of episode 2 was Huey letting Butcher know that it's all rigged and they need to do whatever it takes to stop Homelander and Vought. So Butcher takes Temp V, gets some powers, and goes back to re-interrogate Soulja Boy's sidekick, Gunpowder. I just want to know, let me ask the audience, do you feel like Butcher was a bit reckless in actually doing away with Gunpowder? What if you ended up having more questions for him? How many people do you have access to at this point that you can get information from about Soulja Boy from a first-hand perspective? Then again, Butcher hasn't exactly been known for being a rational person at any point on this show. I will say though, when Gunpowder said, ask the others, ask the CIA, I kind of rolled my eyes because I went, of course they were working with the CIA. An evil team of superpowered individuals led by a guy who murders an entire family of Black people. Sounds pretty CIA to me. I know I didn't really address Victoria/Nadia's origins at Red River, but believe me, there will be time to talk more about her and her evil scheming in future episodes. I'm making cuts for time. So now we can jump ahead to episode 3. Of course, Annie's mother put her in child pageants. I was nauseated watching that, but would it be the boys if we weren't being nauseated at least a little bit while watching? Also, it was a good way to set up that full circle moment with her clenched fist. I can't do it the way she did it because I've been growing my nails out. Now is when we finally start to get more of an introduction to Jensen Ackles' Soulja Boy. He was definitely good at giving that energy of a swashbuckling scumbag, telling young Mallory to smile. If you watched my previous review of The Boys Season 3, hopefully you are starting to see what I meant about them really taking their sweet time to introduce Soulja Boy. Going into watching this season for the first time, I would have assumed that the 3-episode premiere would end with him getting de-iced and coming out of his ice box, but we still haven't seen that. Well, I have because I've seen the entire season, but you know what I mean. How is he not out yet? Let me see Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy running around and causing problems. 3 episodes are done. We are almost halfway through this season. We do see him in that flashback though, and this is when I start to nitpick. I said it in my last review of The Boys Season 3. If you don't want to hear me talking about politics or political things, my reviews about this show will not be the ones for you, so that's your warning. Now let me get into it. I have a real problem with them saying that it was Russians taking Soldier Boy's body. That flashback was taking place in the 1980s. The Sandinistas were allied with the Soviet Union. Therefore, it would have made more sense for you to say Soviets instead of Russians. Homogenizing the Soviet Union into something that is interchangeable with Russia is historically ignorant. It's inaccurate. What did the Soviet Union do besides be the first country to legalize abortion? Many things, as it turns out, including but not limited to thoroughly winning the space race. There are far too many milestones that they accomplished to fit in this review, but among other things, the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova, the first Asian in space, Pham Tuan, and the first Black and Latin person in space. That was an accomplishment achieved as a 2-for-1 with Afro-Cuban Arnaldo Tamayo Mendez. By the way, all 3 of those people are still alive today in Russia, Vietnam, and Cuba, respectively. Interesting how that's not just diversity through gender and ethnicity, but also global cultures. That's what the Soviet Union did. But Hollywood loves to help propagandize this anti-Soviet rhetoric that is treated as interchangeable with Russia-phobia. When the boys brought up Nicaragua, I had that question in my mind of whether or not they were going to do the Hollywood thing where you just use literally any Latin American country to be some generic backdrop for some backstory, which is why I was surprised that they specifically mentioned the Sandinistas. You know, the current president of Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega, is a Sandinista leader, and among other things, he was an ally to the late, great Grenadian revolutionary Maurice Bishop. If you don't know who Maurice Bishop is, I will link one of his speeches in the description box, as well as information about the Sandinistas and the Contras. So the Soviets were allied with the Sandinistas, and the US was allied with the Contras, which I don't think the show, The Boys, did anywhere near enough to reiterate and effectively communicate were horrific war criminals. I'm going to link a 1985 Washington Post article about the horrific atrocities of the Contras. I don't much care for the Washington Post in today's climate because they're a propaganda outlet because Jeff Bezos owns them. But like I said, this article is from 1985, so it will suffice for the purpose of what I am trying to convey. So this 1985 article states, an independent attorney's probe of charges that anti-government rebels in Nicaragua commit human rights atrocities has produced 145 sworn affidavits from witnesses that he claims document a distinct pattern of murders, kidnappings, assaults, and torture of civilians. This is why I don't like the Contras, and this is also why I mentioned Operation Condor in my previous review and the School of Americas, which has been rebranded to WINSEC, because I don't think nearly enough people, especially in America, know about how many human rights violations have previously and continue to happen in Latin America and the Caribbean, specifically with training, arming, and support from the US government. On the one hand, I like that The Boys is mentioning part of this history because I like that the show addresses serious topics and integrates them into their socio-political commentary, but at the same time, the way that this is just glossed over in the show without taking a more firm, clearly presented stance against the Contras and the people who support them is, in my opinion, irresponsible. Yes, we all appreciate that you are mentioning that the US funneled a particular substance from Latin America into Black and brown neighborhoods, but that's far more commonly known. You're preaching to the choir if you are spouting anti-Ronald Reagan sentiments to the audience of The Boys. You could have informed them so much more if you pointed out that something like Operation Cyclone was launched under the Carter administration, even though a lot of people associate it primarily with Reagan's presidency because of those pictures of him with the Mujahideen in the White House. Also, the fact that they said that the Russians took Soldier Boy's body just doesn't make any sense to me. It would have made more sense that the CIA had taken him and that they were hiding his body away, because the US was the one that happily invited Nazi scientists, engineers, and technicians into their elite organizations, like NASA, for example, after World War II. It's called Operation Paperclip. Look it up. Blaming all of your government sins on the Soviet Union is a lazy approach, and I personally expected better from the boys. But here we are. So let's move on to nitpicking some other things, now that I'm done with that tangent. That part where it was mentioned that The Deep is supposed to be involved with a recontextualizing feminism panel with Rose McGowan and Alyssa Milano. I want to know who wrote this line, because you are either bad at research or you are being deliberately messy, and I want to know which one it is. Those two women can't stand each other. Rose McGowan has called out Alyssa Milano for a whole lot. I think she was mostly claiming hypocrisy on the part of her and CAA for acting like they're allies to the Me Too movement, even though CAA blacklisted Courtney Love when she exposed Harvey Weinstein in that one red carpet interview that she did over a decade before the Me Too movement happened. But I don't really remember all of the details, but I'm assuming that someone has probably made a Twitter thread about those two and their feud, or posted a Medium article about it, so if you really want to know more about it, you can go digging into it. This was also an episode that was fantastic at digging into A-Train's material for this season, which I really enjoyed. There's a lot of layers and dimensions explored, so buckle up because we are just getting started with him this season. That line where he says that he's Michael Jordan, not Malcolm X, that was really poignant. I don't at all see that as a throwaway line. I think he really knows the difference, and he's struggling a lot with how much you really have to risk to be a true revolutionary and how much danger you put yourself into if you devote your life to fighting that fight. But again, there's so much potential for A-Train as a character that I really hope that he keeps on this path in seasons to come. I would expect it to be a rocky journey, but I think I'm going to really enjoy watching it. Unrelated, but how are we feeling about finally seeing Black Noir's backstory? He was really pulling on my heartstrings when you saw just how badly he got busted up in that flashback scene. But without spoiling anything, I will simply say this is not the end of the character insight we will be getting into Black Noir in this season. Buckle up, because there's a lot coming for him. Butcher is he's insufferable. He's so damaged. Go to therapy. It's 2022. Therapy is a viable option for you. Now you're lashing out at a child and spreading that generational trauma. I'm tired. I'm truly exhausted. But when it comes to Ryan, I really loved seeing his interactions with Kimiko. It was a great way to get more insight into both of their characters. And I think Kimiko could be a really great mother. Her and Frenchie could run away to Marseille and start a family. Why does Eric Kripke always want to mess with kimchi shippers? Now you've got this offensive stereotype of a Russian woman doing a terrible accent, coming in to torment Frenchie some more. Why can't you just let Kimchi be happy? Let them go to Marseille and just live a quiet life. Frenchie can teach her to cook and bake just cute domestic fluff and romance. But you know what? We can return to kimchi ranting in future episodes because believe me, I will have a lot more to say about them this season. Don't you worry. I tried to condense this review as much as I could. There was just too much to try to cover in detail because it was 3 episodes, but hopefully we will be able to be more thorough for the rest of the reviews because it will be just one at a time. And hopefully I will no longer have a cold, taking time away from me trying to make these weekly reviews. So let me know what you thought of this season 3 premiere and tell me what you want to know about what's left to come this season so I can keep that in mind as I work on making new reviews about, well, episode 4 next. See you in the next one. Bye.